There comes a time in every horror fan's life when you need to answer the question, what are your top 10 favorite slasher movies ever made? Well, we're gonna get into that right now, but first we gotta go over some basic ground rules here. For a film to be a slasher movie, it generally needs to follow these guidelines. The killer is a human, or at least was a human at one time. His weapon of choice is usually some kind of bladed tool. The victims involved are typically teenagers or young adults, and the bulk of all of these twisted events take place inside a house or around a small town. All of the movies I'm about to mention either check every one of these boxes or the vast majority of them. Now with that out of the way, let's get into my picks. Taking the number 10 spot on my list is Child's Play, and who can resist everyone's favorite pint-sized killer? This film is an absolute classic within the genre for a bunch of reasons, but a great aspect about this first entry that none of the subsequent movies in the franchise has is that there's an actual mystery surrounding the doll for the first half of the movie. What's this mother gonna believe? That her young son had a hand in pushing the babysitter out the window, or that his new toy is alive and causing mayhem? Watching the characters wrap their head around what's actually going on here makes for a super entertaining reveal, and the added suspense makes this first movie such a standout slasher. Chucky is definitely one of our most unique horror villains, because how many of them do you know that are only about 2.5 feet tall? That's honestly a big part of what makes him so fun though. He feels like this constant nagging ankle biter that you just can't get rid of no matter how hard you try. Mix in some fun kills, a few hilarious insults, and a pair of overalls, and an iconic horror franchise is born. Coming in at number 9 is Candyman, and for the hundreds of slasher movies that get recognized for their flashy kills and excessive gore, this one drops a full course meal of a story on our plate instead. Don't get me wrong, there's still plenty of damage to be done when you have a hook for a hand and are covered head to toe in bees. That's kind of inevitable, but the expansive backstory and local legend angle that this narrative takes gives a unique flavor to it compared to your usual offering from the genre. Obviously, a big part of why this whole movie works so well is because of Candyman himself. Any old slasher villain can pick up a hook and start gutting people like a fish, but Tony Todd brings the perfect gothic swagger to the role to take this from being a run-of-the-mill horror movie to an experience that leaves a pretty lasting impression. But the energy here is great. It feels dirty, it's kind of depressing, all the feel-good qualities of a rock-solid slasher. At number 8 is X, by far the most recent slasher entry on this entire list. This is one of those movies that's a true homage to the big staples of the genre and reminds you why you love these types of movies in the first place. It takes a little bit of this, a little bit of that, and blends it all together to offer up an experience that somehow feels familiar and fresh at the exact same instant. This is really Mia Goth's time to shine, and she puts on a clinic here as both our final girl and as the old woman who's walking around turning this horny group of characters into gator bites. And unlike a lot of slasher films over the years, the acting is actually a high point here. Rounding out this cast with Jenna Ortega, Kid Cudi, Brittany Snow, and Martin Henderson quickly connects us to all of these characters and leaves you equal parts entertained and upset when they inevitably get led to the slaughter. But this one's a wild ride from start to finish and has all the right ingredients to deliver the goods if you're looking for a slasher that really honors its ancestors before it. Taking the number 7 spot is Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. You knew everybody's favorite machete-wielding mama's boy had to show up somewhere on this list. This has got to be one of the only times in movie history that the 6th installment of anything is the best of the bunch, but here we are. Jason and the overall franchise get brought back to life by a lightning bolt in this entry, and they finally throw caution to the wind and make this big brute a full-on unkillable nightmare, putting this series as a whole in a much better place because of it. This was a massive gamble for the franchise because it completely changed gears from everything we've seen before. Instead of taking itself too seriously and just going through the motions, it's finally winking at the audience and is actually in on the joke. Heads are being ripped off, guys are getting turned into human folding chairs, and there's more hair metal than you could ever ask for in a horror movie. It's 80s slasher bliss, brother. Claiming the 6th spot is Psycho, the original blueprint for the vast majority of the slasher films we know and love today. I mean, it's basically like the Beatles for the genre if the Beatles were a group of bloodthirsty maniacs instead of a rock band. You could make the case that the most famous and well-known kill ever put to screen is in this movie when it comes to the shower sequence, where those crazy high-pitched violin strings will remain a horror trademark until the end of time. They just don't make them like they used to anymore. And what I mean by that is that no one my age has ever seen a motel bathroom that clean. The poster boy for mommy issues himself, Norman Bates, is one of the most interesting characters that has ever been included in a horror movie and is played to perfection by Anthony Perkins, but it all comes down to the man behind the camera. Alfred Hitchcock is known as the master of suspense for a reason, and all of those reasons are on display in this movie, ranging from the camera work to the dialogue. This film is a well well-oiled machine. Coming in at number 5 is the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I remember as a kid, long before ever even watching the movie, thinking that everything that happened in here was a true story. The marketing and narration worked on me big time back in the day and created this kind of disturbing aura around the film that made it seem like you were watching something that you weren't supposed to be watching. I mean, it's a great example of a project being low budget and messy, really working to its benefit and allowing it to stand the test of time that much more. What also makes this movie so jarring is that it's not taking place somewhere far away in outer space or in a dream. This guy set up shop right in our backyard in the middle of rural America. You can't get much more vicious and brutal than a chainsaw, and then you find out what he does to his victims when he's done with them. Yeah, I'm all good. At least you can have a conversation with Buffalo Bill. This dude, Leatherface, is a total lunatic. At number 4 is A Nightmare on Elm Street, and I've always said that the sign of a good horror movie is when it has the ability to make you second guess something mundane and inevitable that you just have to do in your everyday life. Well, this sicko Freddy Krueger has you afraid to put your head on the cold side of the pillow at the end of the day. It's just not right. But it's honestly kind of addicting getting the multiple perspectives of what's happening to his victims, both in his world when he's slicing them up, and how anyone unaffected by Freddy's grasp sees their murder unfolding. Robert Englund puts his heart and soul into playing this sadistic and vengeful madman, which puts in a lot of legwork in making this character become the icon that we know him to be. But having all these ambitious practical effects, this eerie supernatural tone, a killer concept, and introducing us to one of cinema's most recognizable villains are just a few of the reasons why this film is as beloved as it is. Taking the number 3 spot is Scream. Back-to-back Wes Cravens here, buddy. No list is complete without paying respects to the king of meta and self-aware slashers that revitalized the entire genre when it needed it most. There's truly a little bit of something in here for every type of movie fan. It's funny, it's gory, it's unpredictable. I mean, so many slasher film staples have come out of this movie, whether it be having multiple killers or characters literally spelling out all of the tropes within the horror genre. This movie left a permanent mark on the landscape that's still being emulated to this day. A huge selling point of this film is the actual characters themselves. Everyone has their favorite and least favorite, but the script and performances work hand in hand to make this town feel super lived in, which is why it's so easy to get swept up in their situation over the course of the film. There's a reason why Ghostface has one of the most recognizable masks on the face of the planet these days, people. Claiming the number 2 spot is Halloween, and obviously the film that gave us quite possibly the most iconic horror villain of all time had to make its way onto this list. Who knew that after all these years we'd still be obsessed with a guy wearing a bleached Captain Kirk mask and a mechanic onesie? But there's something so addicting about watching him operate and trying to figure out what's going on in that head of his. He doesn't talk, he doesn't think, he doesn't even run, and that somehow makes him even more of an unstoppable killing machine. Laurie Strode acts as a great final girl character because she's got that teenage innocence to her and for the most part acts in intelligent and resourceful ways, making her super easy to root for the entire way through. There's just such a great vibe and atmosphere that comes along with this movie that ushers in that fall season. The jack-o'-lanterns, the leaves on the ground, the unhinged knife-wielding psychopath. It's really starting to feel like Halloween, baby. Coming in at the number 1 spot is Black Christmas. And what better way to completely ruin everybody's holiday cheer than with an absolutely perfect and twisted little slasher movie. There are just so many memorable ingredients to this film that elevate it to the highest possible level. The demented phone calls, the psycho always being in the house, how the actual kills are all staged. Arguably, the creepiest aspect of this entire movie is that we never get a good look at the guy who's doing this. I mean, he never even gets caught in the end, and we don't really know what his motive is. It kind of adds that mysterious and depraved quality to the film that literally anyone could be doing this to these girls and for any reason. There are so many interesting choices made here though, forcing us to take on the killer's POV, finding a way to make Christmas unsettling, and giving our final girl an actual arc outside of just surviving. Not only the best slasher film ever made, but one of the best horror movies ever made as well. So there you have it, guys, my ranking of the 10 best slasher movies of all time. Now you know how my list shakes out, but I want to hear what yours looks like. There are a ton of good slashers out there, so let me know in the comments below which ones have what it takes to make your list. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys at the next one.